This episode is brought to you by pastasworld.com, where you can find jigsaw puzzles, coffee and tea mugs, canvas and poster prints, iPhone cases, and more. You can even order custom items with your own pictures. Go to pastasworld.com or the Pastas World shop on Etsy to learn more.
You're listening to I Love This TV Show, The Golden Girls.
Hi, and welcome to the I Love This TV Show podcast. I'm your host, Noelle from pastasworld.com. Each season of this podcast will contain a TV show in full. This means the length of the season depends on the length of the TV show. The first season is, of course, The Golden Girls.
The Golden Girls, Season 2, Episode 3. Take him, he's mine. Sophia makes a business proposal to Rose for a sandwich business. Dorothy comes in and asks how she looks. Sophia doesn't respond the way she was expecting, but Rose thinks she looks lovely. Dorothy: okay, how do I look? Sophia: the outfit's nice. Now go put some makeup on. Dorothy: Ma, I'm wearing makeup. Sophia: make sure you eat by candlelight. Rose: oh, Dorothy, you look lovely. You really do. Dorothy has a date with a Commodore from the Navy named Jeffrey. Rose points out that she and Jeffrey have been spending a lot of time with each other. Blanche comes in the kitchen to tell Dorothy that her husband is here, but it turns out it's her ex-husband, Stan. Blanche is not amused that Stan is there, but neither is Dorothy. Sophia asks about his wife. Dorothy reminds her that they got divorced. The two go in the living room, and Dorothy asks him what is wrong. She points out she can read him like a book. Dorothy: please, Stan, we were married for 38 years. You can disguise your bald head, but you can't hide your emotions. Now what's wrong? Stan: I lost it, Dorothy. Dorothy: you never had it, Stanley. He tells her he lost his business. Dorothy tries to get rid of him as she has a date with her naval officer, and he does not want to be alone. She tells him exactly how he's going to spend his evening. She keeps walking away from him, and he's following her basically around the couch. It kind of looks like Ring Around the Rosie. So Dorothy then goes into the kitchen and asks one of them to deal with Stan. She asks literally Blanche and Rose to go out with him. Blanche tries to pretend that she has a date. Rose says she's no good with depressed people. Yeah, Dorothy points out she works at a grief counseling center. Rose: well, I'd do it, Dorothy, but I'm really no good at listening to people's problems. Dorothy: Rose, you're a grief counselor. It's what you do for a living. Rose: I know, but I have the highest suicide rate in the office. Dorothy: Rose, if you don't want to go out with Stan, then just say so. Rose: I don't want to go out with Stan. Rose really doesn't want to. She's emphatic. She's waving her hands, everything else. So Dorothy turns her attention back to Blanche. Dorothy: oh, honey, I know that going out with Stan is a big favor. Blanche: the biggest? You're asking me to spend the evening with a man you described as having the personality of a dial tone. And why? So you can go have a splendid evening with a dashing naval officer? With Blanche's refusal, Dorothy goes into bribe mode. She finally gets her to cooperate when she offers to introduce her to all of Jeffrey's naval officer friends who have been out to sea for more than 6 months. Blanche exits the kitchen and tells Stan she'll be with him in 2 minutes. Later, Sophia and Rose are making sandwiches in the kitchen. They are bacon, lettuce, and potato. Rose tells Dorothy that she had a Belgian waffle stand when she was a kid, but they were actually English muffins, and she just carved ridges into them. Dorothy comes back from her date quite happy, and Blanche is not back yet. Dorothy: poor Blanche. When Stan is depressed, he is the second most boring man in the world. Rose: who's the first? Dorothy: Stan when he's not depressed. Blanche arrives back and joins everyone in the kitchen. She tells Dorothy it was the most bizarre evening she ever spent with a man. Blanche sees the sandwiches and is confused that they are potato instead of tomato. Dorothy lays out quite neatly how Blanche's evening most likely went. Blanche tells her it wasn't so bad, with a few corrections to what she guessed. She didn't have any interest in impressing Stan, and he didn't have any in impressing her, so they just relaxed and had fun. Blanche tells them all that she's going out with Stan again the next evening. Dorothy appears thrilled and points out that she points out that Stan left her for a woman half Blanche's age, and I'm guessing that's Blanche's fake age. Rose sums up the evening they all had. Rose: Dorothy had a date with a Commodore. Blanche had a date with Stan. I spent the evening making bacon, lettuce, and potato sandwiches. Days later, Sophia is rushing out the door quite early in the morning with Rose. They want to get a good corner. Rose: We wanted to get the best corner before Johnny No Thumbs shows up with his lunch wagon. Dorothy: Johnny No Thumbs? Rose: Well, actually, he has several fingers missing from each hand. It's remarkable to watch him make a veal and pepper hero. Dorothy is very concerned that the person Sophia is trying to muscle in on is likely connected to the mob. Turns out Dorothy won't be seeing Jeff anymore either, as he's leaving town. Rose is horrified by him leaving her high and dry. Rose: I knew it. The minute I heard you were dating a sailor, I said to myself, there'll be nothing but heartache. Those swabbies drift into port, park their ditties on your doorstep, show you some tricks they learned in the Orient, and then it's a vast me hearties, and they shove off with a serpent tattoo and your heart as souvenirs. Dorothy: You been reading Treasure Island again, Rose? But Rose says it's because her ancestors were Vikings. Yet Dorothy continues to say that Jeffrey is being transferred to a top-secret base, which is why she won't be seeing him anymore. She finally admits that he dumped her. Blanche comes in, and they're all wondering why she stayed out so late with Stan. Dorothy and Blanche are grocery shopping, but Dorothy won't speak to Blanche. Dorothy thinks that Blanche slept with Stan. She says no, she didn't. Blanche also points out that Dorothy and Stan are divorced. They make up and share a hug. Blanche: Oh, that's all right. Listen, last night you were dumped by the man of your dreams. It's not surprising that today you'd be a little irritable. Dorothy: I know, but to be upset about Stan, I'm so embarrassed. Blanche tries to comfort her and is glad that they talked. She then tells Dorothy she's going out with Stan again tonight. He has tickets to the Burt Reynolds dinner theater. Sophia crashes into them in the grocery store. Sophia also plans to continue selling sandwiches even though Johnny No Thumbs leaned on them. Dorothy has gone back to not talking to Blanche. Dorothy blows up at her, though. Dorothy clearly has some issues because she asked why she is sleeping with her husband. Blanche winds up explaining to the whole store what's going on. Stan is Dorothy's ex-husband, not current husband. That night, Sophia is going through the cash box and finds a bunch of IOUs. She tries to teach Rose a little bit about business. Dorothy comes in the kitchen looking for Blanche. Rose and Sophia discuss Dorothy and Blanche fighting. Sophia tells a story about her voyage to America. Dorothy comes back in the kitchen, and she is more upset that Blanche is not back. She puts her jacket on after a brief conversation and heads to Stan's. Rose: Where are you going? Dorothy: To either get ice cream or commit a felony. The doorbell rings. Rose answers. It's Vinny and Rocco. Johnny No Thumbs sent them. Dorothy knocks on Stan's hotel room door. He tells the person with him to stay under the covers. Stan tries to get rid of her, but Dorothy stands her ground. Dorothy: Stanley, you really are one chromosome away from being a potato. You're wearing your toupee to bed. That means one of two things. Either there's a woman in your bed, or Suzanne Somers is on the Tonight Show. Dorothy bypasses Stan after that to talk to the woman in the bed who she thinks is Blanche. When she finishes her speech, a blonde lady with a hideous, squeaky voice pops up out of the bed. It's not Blanche. She goes back to the house, and there's a ton of flowers that Johnny No Thumbs sent to Sophia and to Rose. They are also closing their sandwich business. Dorothy then heads into the living room to talk to Blanche and apologize. The pair have quite the conversation. They hug as well. Blanche does have to ask her one question, though. Why did you marry Stan?
Favorite quotes. Rose. Gee, it sounds kind of complicated. Dorothy. I don't have a husband. Call the police. Dorothy. We were married 38 years. You can disguise your bald head, but not your emotions. Now what's wrong? Stan. I lost it, Dorothy. Dorothy. You never had it, Stanley. Rose. I have the highest suicide rate in the office. Blanche. You're asking me to spend the evening with a man you describe as having the personality of a dial tone? Blanche. Dorothy Zbornak. This was the most bizarre evening I've ever spent with a man. Sophia. Relax. If they were his friends, he'd still have his thumbs. Dorothy. Why is it whenever I think I've met Mr. Right, I've met Mr. Wrong? Blanche. If you won't talk to me, how am I supposed to understand why you're mad at me? Blanche. Last night you were dumped by the man of your dreams. It's not surprising that today you're a little irritable. Dorothy. Stanley, you truly are one chromosome away from being a potato. Dorothy. You're wearing your toupee to bed. That means either there's a woman in your bed or Suzanne Summers is on the Tonight Show. Blanche. Why in the hell did you ever marry Stan? Dorothy. It was my magenta period.
This was certainly an episode. Oof, but yeah, some interesting topics here. Exes and dating a friend's ex, whether it be an ex-husband, an ex-wife, an ex-boyfriend, an ex-girlfriend, etc. Usually that is just some territory you don't want to go anywhere near. It's like, I had a friend, she broke up with this dude, and he had a thing for me, and I'm like, no, I do not date my friend's exes. It got to the point where I had to turn give him a ringtone that, made the point across that I was not going to date him no matter what. But I do get a kick out of the fact that somehow, even though Dorothy is divorced, he goes out with all these other people, he's married other people, but suddenly he's going out with Blanche, and it's not even romantic, it's just friends hanging out kind of thing. And she flips out, and you're sleeping with my husband. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? Because he hadn't been her husband in ages. I mean, it was a couple, she was technically probably at that point a couple wives ago. It's like, Dorothy was the only one who chose to keep him for the long term, and even in the end, when we get to Golden Palace, he's running off and going into hiding for tax evasion. No real surprise there. Stan and honest, those aren't two words that you hear together much. I do feel bad for him that he lost his business. But what did he do to lose the business? Maybe he just wasn't being responsible. Probably some more tax issues, which just get worse with time. Because I know there is an episode later in the show where the guy wind up having to go to the IRS. And that's because he completely lied on the taxes. So maybe that was what led to his business going under in this case. Because he doesn't actually give any reasons. I do feel bad for Dorothy and her naval officer breaking up with her. She did look really spectacular when she went in the kitchen in that outfit. And I do find it quite hilarious that Blanche was only willing to go out with Stan at first because Blanche wanted to meet all of the naval officer friends of Jeffrey who'd been out to sea. I mean, we all know Blanche. Men. That's all she thinks about. But yes, her poor broken heart when he ends it with her. I do have to say the Sophia and Rose's business was really funny. It took me a minute to realize they were saying bacon, lettuce, and potato the very first time I watched this episode, which was probably 20 years ago on Lifetime. And yeah, that's so funny, because I'm like, wait a second, shouldn't the sandwich be bacon, lettuce, and tomato? But maybe they couldn't find tomato in the store, so they went with potato. But then the question becomes, did they just slice raw potato and put raw potato in the sandwich? Or did they actually cook the potato first so that it actually kind of could be chewed? Because you wouldn't want somebody to break their tooth on a raw potato. That's definitely not going to get you a repeat customer anytime soon. But the jealousy that Dorothy popped up with was quite funny. And it wasn't really resolved until the end when that blonde chick with the high squeaky voice popped up out of the bed. That's kind of what she realized was just her being stupid, I guess, or jealous, or just kind of going back in time. Her explanation, though, where she talks about how the 38 years with Stanley and being with Stanley was her thing and not wanting to share that specific thing, I really don't think Blanche had any interest in sharing that. Because it was clear that she wasn't going to sleep with Stan. But Dorothy could not see anything except that, because that's kind of usually all Blanche does with men, is sleep with them. So if she's not sleeping with Stan, then what on earth is she doing? Is she actually having a conversation? Turned out that she was having a conversation with Stan. And she actually enjoyed the conversation, which I find weird because Stan is pretty self-centered, pretty just boring and two-dimensional, and everything is always just about Stan. So it's kind of like, how do you get past that? How do you actually hear something that's not Stan related? Because even in season 5, when they do the Christmas episode and the ladies all go to the soup kitchen to do dinner for the homeless at the church, Stan's there because the wife at the time has kicked him out for, what else? Cheating. And he's just literally, one of my favorite lines is when Dorothy, or maybe it's Sophia, one of them say, he's bringing the homeless down. But yeah, he's kind of an energy suck. He's always like this kind of negative void whenever he pops into an episode. You're always kind of like, because you never know what negativity he's going to bring. Because Stan is good at being negative. He's also very good at whining. Though it would be interesting to know if Blanche did actually go to the Burt Reynolds Dental Theater, and if they actually did enjoy the show. That was never answered, and I would have loved to know the answer. Alright, well, thanks for reliving this episode with me. It's been great reliving this episode with you. Please check out the podcast website, anchor.fm/I love this TV show, no spaces. You'll be able to see the show notes and also support this podcast. To check out everything I'm up to and nerding about, head over to pastasworld.com. You'll also find additional content there. Thanks for listening, and stay golden.